The Mafia boss's daughter broke her silence, pointing at a waitress. One word will shatter a widower's world, expose a deadly secret buried for years, and force everyone to question what is real. The price of the truth could be their lives. If you're new here, subscribe and comment your location. Now let's begin. The air in Il Paradiso was thick with expensive cigar smoke and quiet power. At the best table, Marco, the wolf Conti, cut his steak. His knife made no sound on the plate. Next to him, in a high chair, his 2-year-old daughter Stella pushed food around. She was a quiet child. She had never spoken a word. Her mother, Elena, had died 2 years ago. A car bomb, meant for Marco. Stella had been just a tiny baby then. The doctors said there was no physical reason for her silence. It was grief, they whispered. Marco's right-hand man, David, sat nearby, his eyes always moving. A young waitress moved between the tables. Her name was Lucy. She was new, struggling to remember the orders. She looked tired. She dropped a spoon. It clattered on the floor. She bent to pick it up, her blonde ponytail swinging. When she stood, her eyes met Marco's for a second. She looked away quickly, her face pale. Marco froze. His fork stopped halfway to his mouth. He knew that face. It was Alina's face. The same wide, green eyes, the same curve of her cheekbone, the same worried little frown. He felt the room tilt. David saw his boss's face and followed his gaze. David's hand went inside his jacket, touching his gun. Lucy felt the stares. She kept her head down, serving a table of businessmen. Her hands shook. Stella had been watching the shiny spoon. Now she looked up. Her eyes found Lucy across the room. Lucy turned, holding a tray of drinks, and for a moment she was lit by the soft light from the kitchen door. Stella's small finger lifted. She pointed straight at Lucy. Everyone at Marco's table went still. Then Stella spoke. Her voice was clear as a bell in the silent, fancy restaurant. "Mom." The word hung in the air. No one breathed. Marco's world shattered. The word he'd waited for. The name of the woman he'd buried. It came from his daughter's lips, aimed at a ghost. Lucy dropped the tray. Glasses and plates crashed to the floor. The sound was like an explosion. She stared at the little girl pointing at her, her own face a mask of shock and confusion. "Stella," Marco whispered. His voice was rough. He looked from his daughter to the waitress. The resemblance was impossible. It was like looking at Alina, but younger, more tired, scared. David was on his feet. He snapped his fingers. 2 large men in suits appeared from the shadows. They moved toward Lucy. "Bring her," Marco said. His tone was quiet, but it filled the room. Lucy backed up. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about the tray. I'll pay for it." The men took her gently but firmly by the arms. "The boss wants to talk to you," one said. "No, please, I just work here," she pleaded, but they led her to Marco's table. Marco stood up. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered. His eyes, dark and cold, scanned her face, every detail. The small scar above her left eyebrow, Elena had one from a childhood fall. The way her bottom lip quivered when she was afraid. "What is your name?" he asked. Lucy. Lucy Miller." "How old are you?" 24. Elena would have been 29. This girl was younger, but the face. "Look at her, Stella," Marco said softly to his daughter. "Look at the lady." Stella smiled. A big, happy smile she never showed anyone. She reached her chubby hands out toward Lucy. "Mom," she said again, with certainty. Lucy's eyes filled with tears. She didn't know why. Looking at the little girl made her chest hurt. She's confusing me with someone," Lucy whispered. "Yes," Marco said, "with my wife, who is dead." He nodded to David. David pulled out a phone, tapped it, and handed it to Marco. Marco held it up to Lucy. On the screen was a photograph of Elena Conti. She was laughing, her head thrown back. She was Lucy's twin. Lucy gasped. I don't understand." "Neither do I," Marco said. His voice was low, dangerous. "Take her to the office. I want to talk to her. Alone." "You can't just take me," Lucy cried. The restaurant manager started to come over, but one look from David made him stop and turn around. "You will come with me, Lucy Miller," Marco said, picking up Stella, who now had her eyes locked on Lucy. "Or you will explain to the police why you are impersonating a dead woman. Your choice." Trembling, Lucy let Marco's men lead her through the restaurant, past the staring customers, and into a private elevator at the back. Marco followed, holding Stella, who kept looking over his shoulder at Lucy. The elevator went up to the top floor. They walked into a luxurious office. It had big windows showing the city lights. There was a big desk, leather sofas, and a play area for Stella. Marco put Stella down with her toys. She didn't play. She just sat and watched Lucy. "Sit," Marco told Lucy, pointing to a chair in front of the desk. He didn't sit behind the desk. He leaned against it, right in front of her, looking down. David stood by the door. "Tell me everything. Where were you born?" "Riverside General Hospital," Lucy said quickly. "My parents are Frank and Mary Miller. They live in Oakwood. I went to Oakwood High. I'm a student. I waitress to pay my bills. You can check." "I already am," David said, looking at his phone. "Why did you come to work here? At my restaurant?" Marco asked. "I didn't know it was yours. I answered an ad online. I needed a job that paid tips. I swear I never saw you or your wife before in my life." Stella got up. She walked over to Lucy on her steady little legs. She stopped in front of her and put a hand on Lucy's knee. "Mom," Stella said softly. Lucy looked down at the little girl. Her heart did a strange, painful flip. Without thinking, she reached out and stroked Stella's dark, soft hair. Stella leaned into the touch. Marco watched this. His face was stone, but his eyes were storms. Elena had loved Stella more than anything. She would stroke her hair just like that. David's phone buzzed. He read the message. "Boss, preliminary check. Lucy Miller exists. Birth certificate, school records, social security number. It all looks normal. Parents are who she says they are." "A perfect identity," Marco murmured. "Or a stolen one." He crouched down in front of Lucy, so close she could smell his cologne. "Did someone pay you? Did someone train you to look like her, to get close to me?" "No, I look like myself. I don't know why I look like your wife." "My wife had a mole, here." He pointed to a spot just below her right ear. "Do you?" Lucy's hand flew to her neck. She didn't have a mirror. She didn't know. Marco's hand came up. His fingers were warm. He pushed her hair aside, gently but firmly. He looked at the skin below her ear. There was nothing. He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding, a mix of disappointment and relief. "See, I'm not her," Lucy said, her voice shaking. "But you could be her sister, a cousin she never knew about. Did your parents adopt you?" "No, they're my real parents." "We'll see," Marco said, standing up. "You will stay here tonight." "What? You can't keep me here." "I can, for your own safety and for my questions. David, take her to the guest suite. Post Paul at the door. She is not to leave." David nodded and took Lucy's arm. As she was led out, Stella began to cry. Not a loud cry, but a sad, quiet whimpering. She reached for Lucy. "Mama." That word, Mama, broke something in Marco. Stella had never tried to say that before. "Wait," Marco said. David stopped. Marco looked at Lucy's terrified face, then at his daughter's tear-streaked one. "Bring her back. She stays in here, with us." "Boss, that's not secure," David said quietly. "I decide what is secure," Marco snapped. He pointed to the large, plush sofa. "She sleeps there. You and Paul stay outside the door. Now give me your phone." Confused, Lucy handed over her cheap phone. Marco took it. "You will talk to no one." He then picked up Stella, who was still crying. He walked over to the sofa and sat down, holding his daughter. He looked at Lucy. "Sit." Lucy sat on the far end of the sofa, pressed against the arm, as far from him as she could. Stella squirmed in Marco's arms. She reached for Lucy again. Slowly, carefully, Lucy held out her arms. Marco, after a long pause, let Stella go. Stella crawled into Lucy's lap, put her thumb in her mouth, and laid her head on Lucy's chest. In seconds, she was asleep. Lucy sat perfectly still, terrified to move. She could feel the weight of the little girl. She could smell her baby shampoo smell. It felt familiar. Marco watched them. In the dim light of the office, with Stella asleep in her arms, Lucy looked even more like Alina. The way she held her head, the protective curve of her arm around the child. "The bomb was in her car," Marco said suddenly, his voice a rough whisper in the quiet room. "She was going to the market to buy strawberries. She loved strawberries. I heard the explosion from 3 blocks away." Lucy didn't know what to say. I'm so sorry." "They never found much of her," he continued, as if he needed to say it. "Dental records confirmed it. We buried what was left." He looked directly at Lucy. "So you tell me, how can my daughter, who has never spoken, look at you and see her mother?" "I don't know," Lucy whispered, tears finally falling. "I wish I did." That night, Lucy slept fitfully on the sofa. Marco didn't sleep. He sat in his chair, watching them. Sometimes he looked at photos of Alina on his phone. Then he looked at Lucy. The differences were there. Lucy's hair was a different shade of blonde, her hands were rougher from work, she had no mole. But the likeness was haunting. In the morning, Stella woke up first. She patted Lucy's cheek. "Mom." Lucy opened her eyes. For a second, in the haze of sleep, she smiled at the little girl. Then she remembered where she was and sat up quickly. Marco was already awake, fresh coffee in his hand. He looked at them. "She slept through the night. She never does that." A woman arrived, Stella's usual nanny, Rita. She was shocked to see Lucy but said nothing. She took Stella to get her changed for the day. David came in with a file. "Deeper dive on Lucy Miller. It's solid, boss, almost too solid. School photos from every year. She looks like herself, just younger versions of the woman in the other room." "What about the parents?" "Frank Miller, retired postman. Mary Miller, school librarian. Quiet life. No criminal ties, no large, unexplained bank deposits." "And the pregnancy?" Marco asked, his voice dropping. David glanced at the closed bathroom door where Rita was with Stella. "Mary Miller's medical records show she gave birth to Lucy at Riverside. But there's a 9-month gap before that where the records are sparse. She claimed to be on bed rest in another state with family." "A cover," Marco said, "to adopt a baby without it being known." "Or to hide a pregnancy that wasn't her husband," David suggested. The bathroom door opened. Stella ran out, clean and dressed. She went straight to Lucy, who was now standing nervously by the window. "Up," Stella demanded, raising her arms. Lucy looked at Marco. He gave a slight, stiff nod. Lucy picked Stella up. Stella hugged her neck tightly. Marco's phone rang. He answered, his face darkened. "When?" "I see. Keep him there. I'm coming down." He hung up. "Lucy, you're coming with me. David with us. Rita, stay with Stella." "Where are we going?" Lucy asked, fear rising again. "To meet your father," Marco said. They drove in a black SUV to a smaller, older restaurant in a less fancy part of town. It was called Miller's Diner. Lucy's heart sank. Her parents were here. Marco had brought them here. Inside, the diner was empty except for 2 of Marco's men and an older couple sitting in a booth. Frank Miller, a thin man with glasses, had his arm around his weeping wife, Mary. "Lucy," Mary cried when she saw her. "Mom, Dad." Lucy tried to go to them, but David held her arm. Marco sat down in the booth across from them. He didn't say hello. He placed a photograph of Alina on the table between them. Frank Miller went pale. Mary let out a choked sob and looked away. "You know this woman," Marco stated. It wasn't a question. "We don't want any trouble," Frank said, his voice trembling. "You have it. My daughter thinks your daughter is her mother. This woman," he tapped Alina's photo, "was my wife. She died. Now explain." Mary Miller cried harder. Frank held her tight. He looked old and defeated. "We promised," he whispered. "We promised never to tell." "Tell what?" Lucy begged. "Dad, what is he talking about?" Frank looked at his daughter, his eyes full of love and pain. You're not our biological child, Lucy." The words hit Lucy like a physical blow. She swayed on her feet. David steadied her. "We couldn't have children," Mary sobbed, finally looking up. A scared, beautiful young woman came to us. She was pregnant. She said she was in trouble. She needed a safe place for her baby to be born. She paid us to take her in to pretend the baby was ours. She said if anyone ever asked, we were to say she was our niece, staying with us. She gave us money, a lot of money. She made us swear to love you and protect you and never, ever look for her. Who was she? Marco demanded, leaning forward, his fists clenched on the table. She said her name was Alina, Frank said. Alina Smith, but we didn't believe that was her real name. She was terrified, always looking over her shoulder. She had that little scar above her eyebrow. She left 2 weeks after Lucy was born. She kissed Lucy goodbye, cried for an hour, and then she was gone. We never saw her again. Alina, the same name almost. Marco's mind was racing. Alina was pregnant when she died, but the bomb, they only found one body. They assumed. What if they were wrong? What if Alina, pregnant and scared of the constant danger, had planned an escape? What if she had paid a doctor to declare her dead in the explosion, while she slipped away to have her baby in secret? But that would mean. He looked at Lucy, who was crying silently, her world destroyed. How old is Lucy? Marco asked, his voice deadly calm. She's 24, Frank said. Her exact birthday, time of birth. October 12th, 7:04 p.m. Marco pulled out his phone. He called a number. James, it's Marco. I need you to pull the full, original, unaltered coroner's report on my wife, not the public one, the raw file, and the reports from the private investigator I hired after her death. Now. He hung up. He looked at Lucy with new, terrifying intensity. Alina disappeared 8 months before the bomb. She said she was visiting family in Italy. The communications were spotty. She came back 2 weeks before she died. She was different, quiet. He stood up, packing. She was pregnant when she left. She told me she lost the baby in Italy. She was heartbroken. I believed her. Lucy put a hand to her stomach, feeling sick. What are you saying? I'm saying the baby didn't die. You were born. She gave you to the Millers to keep you safe from my world. Then she came back to me. His voice broke. She came back to me, but she left you behind to keep you out of it. And then someone killed her anyway. The pieces were crashing together. Stella was not Alina's first child. Lucy was Stella's half-sister. That's why Stella calls you Mom, Marco said, awestruck and horrified. You don't just look like Alina, you are like her. You share her blood. Stella feels it. She knows it. Lucy looked at the man she now understood was her biological father, a mafia boss, a man whose world had gotten her mother killed, the mother who had given her up to save her. You, Lucy said, her voice trembling with a new kind of fear and anger. Your life is why she left me. Your enemies killed her. Marco flinched as if struck. He had no defense. Just then his phone buzzed. He read the message from James, his tech expert. His face went from pale to ashen. The coroner's report, he said, his voice hollow. James found a hidden note in the digital metadata. The dental records used to ID Alina, they were compared to Alina's records from 5 years prior, not from her most recent visit, 6 months before her death. He looked up, his eyes burning. Someone switched the records, the body in the car, it wasn't her. She's alive, David whispered, shocked. Or she was then, Marco said. But if she staged her death twice, once to escape with Lucy and once to escape from me for good. A terrible, cold rage filled him. Then someone helped her. Someone in my organization, someone close. He looked at David, at the men by the door. Betrayal hung thick in the air. Suddenly, the front window of the diner exploded. Glass flew everywhere. A black van screeched to a halt outside. Men in ski masks jumped out, holding automatic weapons. Get down, Marco roared, throwing himself over the Miller's booth. Bullets ripped through the diner. Marco's men fired back. It was chaos, screaming, crashing, the smell of gunpowder. David pulled Lucy to the floor behind the counter. They're not here for the boss. They're shooting at you, he yelled over the noise. Someone knew Lucy was here. Someone knew who she really was, and they wanted her dead. Marco grabbed a pistol from inside his jacket. He fired 3 quick shots through the broken window. One of the masked men fell. The others took cover behind the van. "David, back doors now," Marco shouted. He didn't wait. He grabbed Frank and Mary Miller, pulling them off the floor. "Move." David yanked Lucy up. They ran, hunched over, through the swinging doors into the hot, greasy kitchen. A cook was hiding under a steel table. A back door led to an alley filled with dumpsters. The black SUV was there, but another car, a sedan, blocked its exit. 2 more masked men stood by it. "Other way," Marco barked. They turned and ran down the alley, away from the shooting. Lucy's heart was pounding in her throat. Her parents were gasping for breath. They burst out onto a busy street. People screamed and scattered at the sight of Marco's gun. He flagged down a passing taxi, shoving the driver out. "Get in, all of you." They piled in Marco, David, Lucy, Frank, and Mary. David took the wheel. He slammed the pedals, swerving into traffic. Marco looked back. The sedan was following them. "Who are they?" Lucy cried, clutching her mother's hand. "Who knew we were coming here?" Marco asked, his voice like ice. "Only me, Paul, and James," David said, his knuckles white on the wheel. He took a sharp turn. "James set the meeting. He sent the address," Marco said, his eyes narrowing. "My own tech man." "He's been with you for 10 years, David argued. "Elena was gone for 8 months before the bomb. Plenty of time to turn someone." Marco pulled out his phone. He didn't call James. He called Paul, the man guarding his office. "Paul, status." "All quiet, boss. Stella is having lunch with Rita. Is everything okay?" "Lock down the floor. No one in or out except you and Rita. If James shows up, detain him. Use force." "Understood." Marco hung up. He looked at Lucy and her parents in the backseat. They were clinging to each other, terrified. He had dragged them into a war. His war. "Where are we going?" Frank Miller asked, his voice thin. "Somewhere safe," Marco said. He gave David an address on the outskirts of the city. The safe house was an ordinary-looking brick house in an ordinary neighborhood. Inside, it was not ordinary. It had steel-reinforced doors, security cameras everywhere, and a room full of monitors. Once inside, Marco locked the door. He pointed to the living room. "Sit. Do not touch the windows." Mary Miller was crying softly. Frank held her. Lucy just stood there, shaking. "You said she might be alive," Lucy said to Marco. My mother." "It's a possibility," Marco said, running a hand through his hair. He looked exhausted. "She was smart. She was resourceful. If she wanted to disappear, she could." "But why? Why leave Stella? Why leave you if she came back?" Lucy asked. Marco's face was full of pain. "Guilt, maybe, for leaving you, for lying to me about losing our child. Maybe she came back because she still loved me, but she couldn't live the life anymore. So she staged her death, for real this time." He looked at Lucy. "But someone found out. Someone who wants any trace of her gone. That means you." A monitor beeped. David looked at it. Car approaching, slow. Marco moved to the monitor. A silver car pulled up 2 houses down. A man got out. He was tall, thin, wearing glasses. He carried a laptop bag. "It's James," David said, his hand going to his gun. James looked around nervously. He walked toward the safe house. "Let him in," Marco said quietly, "but be ready." David unlocked the door. James stepped inside, blinking in the dim light. He saw Marco, David, and the frightened family in the living room. "Boss," James said, his voice shaky. "I got your message to Paul. I came straight here. What's going on?" "The diner." "Who did you tell, James?" Marco asked. He didn't shout. His quiet tone was more frightening. "No one, I swear. I followed your orders. I pulled the files. I sent you the address. That's all." Marco walked up to him. "The dental records were switched. You found that note in the metadata. Who else has access to those files?" "Just me and the original coroner, Dr. Evans, but he retired years ago, moved to Florida. And the private investigator's report, the one I hired after Alina's death, the one that said there were inconsistencies in her trip to Italy." James paled. "That report, you told me to bury it. You said it was just grief talking, so I did. I sealed it." You sealed it or you altered it, David growled, stepping forward. I sealed it. Boss, you have to believe me. I'm loyal to you. James was sweating now. Marco stared at him. He had known James for a long time. The man was a genius with computers, but he was not a fighter. He looked genuinely scared. The men at the diner were professionals. They were trying to kill Lucy, Marco said. They knew where we were. The information came from your computer, James. Trace it, now. Marco pointed to a desk with computer equipment. James hurried over, his hands trembling as he plugged in his laptop. His fingers flew over the keys. Everyone watched in tense silence. Lucy watched Marco. He stood like a statue, but his eyes were alive, calculating every possibility. I see it, James whispered after a few minutes. A remote access Trojan, sophisticated. It's been in my system for, oh God, for about 3 years. 3 years, Marco repeated, around the time of the bombing. Someone has been watching everything I do, reading every file I access. They saw me pull the coroner's report today. They saw me send the diner address. They sent the hit team. James looked up, horrified. Boss, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. Who? Marco's single word was a command. James typed furiously. The signal is bounced through multiple proxy servers, but the origin point, it's coming from inside the city, from the financial district. Marco and David exchanged a look. The financial district meant business, corporate enemies, rival families, or something else. Can you get a specific address? David asked. Maybe, but it will take time. They're good. Marco's phone rang again. It was Paul. Boss, Paul's voice was tight. We have a situation. A delivery man came. He had a package for you, special delivery, no return address. He insisted it had to be signed for by you personally. When I turned him away, he became aggressive. I had to deal with him. Where is the package? In the lobby. I haven't opened it. It's ticking. A bomb at his office, where Stella was. Marco's face went blank with pure, cold fury. Get Stella and Rita out of the building. Now, use the panic room elevator. Go to the secondary location. Do not tell anyone where you are going. Call me when you are safe. He hung up. He looked at the people in the room. His daughter was in danger. His other daughter was standing here, a target. The woman he loved might be alive, hiding from him. Rage and fear warred inside him. James, you stay here and trace that signal. David, you're with me. We're going to the office. What about us? Lucy asked, standing up. She was afraid, but a new strength was in her voice. You can't just leave us here. You are staying here. It's the safest place. No, Lucy said. The word surprised even her. Stella is my sister. I'm not hiding while someone tries to hurt her. And I want answers about my mother. I'm coming with you. Marco looked at her. He saw Alina's fire in her eyes, the same stubborn set of her jaw. He gave a single, sharp nod. Fine, but you do exactly as I say. Your parents stay here with James. David, leave 2 men outside. Frank Miller stood up. You keep our daughter safe, Marco Conti. You owe her that much. Marco met the older man's eyes. I owe her more than I can ever repay. I will protect her with my life. They left in a different car, a plain gray sedan from the garage. David drove. Marco sat in the passenger seat, checking his weapons. Lucy sat in the back, her stomach in knots. As they neared the downtown area, Marco's phone buzzed. A text from Paul, Stella safe. At secondary. Package was a dummy. Loud clock, no explosives. A scare. Marco let out a breath. A scare, or a distraction. Turn around, David. Don't go to the office. Go to the warehouse on Pier 12. The import warehouse. Why? Because if someone wanted to draw me to my office, it means they don't want me looking somewhere else. James said the signal came from the financial district. Our import business has offices there. The books for that business, Alina kept them. She was the only one who understood them completely. Lucy leaned forward. What are you thinking? I'm thinking my wife was planning her escape for a long time, and she would need money, a lot of money, money that couldn't be traced to me. They arrived at a large, weathered warehouse by the water. It was night now, and the place was dark and quiet. Marco led them to a side door. He typed a code into a keypad. The door clicked open. Inside, it smelled of salt and old wood. Marco didn't turn on the main lights. He used a flashlight, moving past crates and shipping containers to a small office in the back. The office was dusty. Marco went straight to an old metal filing cabinet. It was locked. He didn't look for a key. He pulled a small tool from his pocket and picked the lock. The drawer slid open. It was full of ledgers and files. Marco pulled them out, laying them on the desk. He shone his flashlight on the pages. Lucy watched him. He moved with a focused intensity, his fingers tracing numbers and entries. "Here," he said, his voice low. For 2 years before she disappeared, she was siphoning money, small amounts, from shipping overages, from phantom fees. She was good, I never noticed. He looked up, a strange mix of pride and pain on his face. She built a fortune for herself, for you. He pulled out a final ledger. Taped to the inside back cover was a small, sealed envelope. On the front, in elegant handwriting, was a single word: Marco. His hands shook as he picked it up. He stared at it. This was her handwriting, no doubt. "Open it," Lucy whispered. He tore the envelope open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. He read it silently. His face changed. The hard lines of the Mafia boss softened. His eyes glistened in the flashlight's beam. He handed the letter to Lucy. "My dearest Marco, if you are reading this, then I have failed. I had hoped to never leave, but the fear has won. The fear for our child. I am pregnant, my love. I found out just before I told you I was going to Italy. I couldn't bear to bring another life into this world of shadows and guns. I saw what it did to your father. I see what it does to you. So I am going to do a terrible thing. I am going to leave you. I have arranged for our baby to be born in secret, to be given to a good family, far from our war. I will come back to you because I cannot live without you. But I will carry this secret and this guilt forever. I have set aside money, not from you, but from them, the vultures who leech from our business. It is clean, or as clean as it can be. It is for her, for our daughter. Her name is Lucia. Please, if you find this, if you find her, know that I loved you more than my own life. But I loved her enough to give her a chance at one. Forever yours, Elena." Lucia read the words through a blur of tears. Her mother had loved her. She had chosen this, to give her a normal life. "She came back," Marco said, his voice thick. "She came back to me carrying this secret, and then someone killed her for it, someone who found out what she had done." A floorboard creaked outside the office door. Marco's head snapped up. He shoved the letter into his pocket and killed the flashlight. The room plunged into darkness. Lucy froze. She heard it too, soft footsteps on the concrete floor. David had his gun drawn, pressed against the wall by the door. The office door swung open slowly. A man stood silhouetted against the dim light from the warehouse windows. He was holding a gun. "Hello, Marco," the man said. His voice was familiar. Marco turned on his flashlight, shining it directly in the man's face. It was Silvio, Marco's underboss, his most trusted advisor, the man who had given the eulogy at Alina's funeral. "Silvio," Marco said, the name a curse. "I thought you might come here eventually," Silvio said. He didn't point his gun at Marco. He pointed it at Lucy. "When I heard about the girl at the restaurant, I knew Alina's little secret had come home." "You," Marco breathed, "you killed her." "I had no choice." Silvio's voice rose, echoing in the empty warehouse. "She was stealing from the business. She was going to run, and she was going to take the account numbers with her. She was weak, Marco. She was making you weak." Marco took a step forward, his body trembling with rage. "She was my wife. She was a liability. I planted the bomb to protect you, to protect us. And then I find out she had already stolen millions and hidden a child." Silvio's gun hand shook. "This ends now. The girl dies, the story dies with her. And you, Marco, you will go back to being the wolf. We can forget this ever happened." "You think I would let you live after this?" Marco's voice was deadly calm. "I think you don't have a choice." Silvio smiled, a nasty, cold smile. I'm not alone. From the shadows behind Silvio, more men appeared. 4 of them, all armed. David was good, but 5 against 2, with Lucy in the middle, was bad math. Marco looked at Lucy. He saw Alina's eyes. He saw his daughter. He made a decision. He dropped his gun. It clattered on the concrete floor. Let her go, Silvio. She knows nothing. She's just a waitress. Silvio laughed. Nice try, but she's the proof, the living proof of your wife's betrayal. He raised his gun, aiming at Lucy's head. Goodbye, Lucy. A shot rang out. But it wasn't from Silvio's gun. Silvio cried out, dropping his weapon, clutching his shoulder. A dark stain spread across his suit jacket. From the high catwalk above the warehouse floor, a figure stepped into the light. A woman. She held a rifle, smoke curling from its barrel. Her blonde hair was tied back. She wore dark, practical clothes. She looked down, her face illuminated by the safety lights. It was Alina. Marco's breath left his body. He stared, unable to process the sight. For 2 years he had mourned a ghost, and now she stood above him, a rifle in her hands, real and alive. Alina, his voice was a broken whisper. Silvio staggered, staring up in pure horror. No, it's not possible. I saw the report. I saw the body. You saw what I wanted you to see, Silvio, Alina's voice called down, clear and cold. It was her voice. The voice Marco heard in his dreams. A Jane Doe from the morgue, dressed in my clothes with altered dental records. A costly trick, but worth it. She began to descend the metal stairs, her movements sure and steady, the rifle never wavering from Silvio's men. I knew you were the snake in the garden, Silvio. I heard you on the phone, talking about handling the problem with the books. So I made a plan. I died. And I've been watching you ever since. She reached the warehouse floor. She was thinner, older. Her face was harder, etched with lines of survival, but it was her. Marco could only stare, his heart hammering against his ribs. Lucy was paralyzed, one hand pressed to her mouth. This was the woman from the photograph, her mother, alive. Alina's eyes flicked to Lucy for just a second. A world of pain and love flashed in that look. Then her gaze snapped back to Silvio's men. Drop your guns, now. They hesitated, looking at their wounded boss. She's one woman, Silvio snarled, clutching his bleeding shoulder. From the shadows behind the crates, 3 more figures emerged. 2 men and a woman, all dressed in black, all holding weapons. Alina's team. She hadn't been hiding alone. I am not one woman, Alina said quietly. I am a mother who has lost everything. You do not want to test me. The clatter of guns hitting the concrete floor echoed in the vast space. Marco finally found his voice. Why? The single word held years of agony. Why did you leave me? Why let me grieve? Alina's composure cracked for a second. A tear traced a path through the dust on her cheek. Because I had to, Marco. I took the money to protect Lucia. But after I faked my death, I couldn't come back. Silvio would have known. He would have never stopped looking. He would have found her. She looked at Lucy again, her expression softening. I had to stay dead to keep her alive. It was the only way. She stepped closer to Silvio. But I kept watching. I heard about Stella's first word. I knew my daughters had found each other, and I knew Silvio would make his move. She looked at Marco, her eyes pleading for understanding. I came back tonight to end him, to finally make it safe. You should have come to me, Marco roared, the pain finally breaking through. We could have faced him together. We could have been a family. What family, Marco? Alina cried, her own anger surfacing. The family where men like him wait in the shadows. The family where our daughter points to a stranger and calls her mom because her real mother had to be a ghost. I did what I thought was right. Silvio saw his chance. While they argued, he had slowly been edging toward his fallen gun with his good hand. He lunged for it. Everything happened at once. Alina swung her rifle. David fired. Marco dove for his own discarded weapon. Silvio grabbed the gun, rolled, and didn't aim at Marco or Alina. He aimed at the source of all the trouble, Lucy. No, Alina screamed. Marco fired. 2 gunshots exploded, overlapping. Silvio jerked, a red flower blooming on his chest. His shot went wide, smashing into a crate above Lucy's head. He slumped to the floor, his eyes wide and unseeing. The second shot had come from the warehouse entrance. Everyone turned. Standing there, holding a smoking pistol, was a middle-aged man in a cheap suit. He looked out of place. It was Frank Miller, Lucy's father. His hand was steady, his face grim. "No one shoots at my little girl," he said, his voice surprisingly firm. Alina stared at Frank, then at Mary, who stood behind him, her face pale but determined. The people who had raised her child. In the stunned silence that followed, Marco walked over to Silvio's body. He kicked the gun away. It was over. He then turned to Alina. They stood 10 feet apart, a canyon of lies and years between them. "You're alive," he said, the reality finally sinking in. "I am," she whispered. "Stella, she looks just like you." At the mention of her younger daughter's name, Alina's strength seemed to leave her. The rifle dipped. Is she okay?" "She's safe. She's beautiful. She doesn't speak. Not until today." Alina nodded, tears flowing freely now. She spoke for Lucy. Lucy finally found her legs. She took a step toward the woman who was her mother. "You gave me away." Alina flinched as if struck. "I gave you a chance, a life without fear. Look at Frank and Mary. They are good people. They gave you what I never could." "I needed you," Lucy said, her own tears falling. "I know," Alina sobbed, "and I have hated myself every single day for it. But seeing you now, strong, alive, it was worth the pain." Marco watched the two of them, the wife he thought was dead, the daughter he never knew existed. The weight of it all was crushing. The betrayal was immense, but so was the love that had caused it. "What happens now?" David asked, breaking the silence. He was covering Silvio's men, who looked terrified. Alina wiped her face. "My team will handle the cleanup here. Silvio is gone. His lieutenants were here. They'll fall in line or disappear. The threat is over." She looked at Marco, a question in her eyes. Marco understood. The choice was his. He could walk away. He could let this ghost go back into the shadows. He could try to rebuild some kind of life with the daughter he just found. He could raise Stella with the memory of a mother, not the reality. Or he looked at Lucy, who was watching him, her eyes so much like her mother. He thought of Stella, reaching for a sister she somehow recognized. He thought of the empty, hollow years without Alina. He made his choice. "You're coming home," he said to Alina. It wasn't a request. Alina shook her head. "Marco, you don't understand. I can't just—" "Yes, you can," he interrupted, his voice commanding but softer now. "The man who wanted you dead is gone. You said it yourself. You came back to end the threat. It's ended." He took a step toward her. "Our daughter has a sister. Our other daughter has a mother. I have a wife." "It's not that simple," she pleaded. "It is," Marco said, his own emotions raw. "You made a choice to leave. Now make a choice to stay, for them, for us." He held out his hand to her. Alina looked at his hand. She looked at Lucy's hopeful, tear-streaked face. She thought of Stella, a toddler she had never held. Slowly, she lowered the rifle all the way. She handed it to one of her team. Then, she walked to Marco and placed her hand in his. It was cold. He enveloped it in both of his, warming it. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "We have time," he said. "We have time to be sorry and to forgive." He turned to Frank and Mary. "You will always be her parents. You gave her life when we could not. Our home is your home. You will never want for anything again. That is my vow." Frank nodded, still holding the gun. He looked at it, seemed surprised, and carefully put it down. Mary just cried, nodding her thanks. Marco looked at David. "Get the cars. We're all going to the secondary location. We're going to see Stella." David nodded, a small smile touching his lips for the first time in days. "Yes, boss." The drive was quiet. Alina sat in the back of the SUV between Marco and Lucy. She held Lucy's hand tightly, as if afraid she would vanish. She leaned her head on Marco's shoulder, and he put his arm around her, holding her close, feeling the solid reality of her. They arrived at a cozy, secluded house in the woods. Paul was at the door, his eyes widening when he saw Alina. He said nothing, just stepped aside. Inside, the nanny Rita was reading a book in the living room. Stella was on the floor, stacking blocks. She looked up when they entered. Her eyes went past Marco, past Lucy, and landed on Alina. Alina fell to her knees, a choked sound escaping her. Stella stared. She dropped the block. She got up and walked over, her little steps slow and deliberate. She stopped in front of the crying woman. She studied Alina's face. She reached out one small hand and touched her mother's cheek, wiping away a tear. Stella didn't say, "Mom." She didn't say anything. She simply leaned forward and put her arms around Alina's neck, hugging her. Alina wrapped her arms around her daughter, her whole body shaking with silent sobs. She buried her face in Stella's soft hair, breathing her in for the first time. Lucy knelt down beside them, putting her arms around both her mother and her sister. Marco stood watching, his own vision blurring. David and Paul quietly left the room, giving them privacy. It wasn't a perfect, happy ending. There were too many scars, too much lost time. There would be hard conversations, tears, and anger yet to come. Trust had to be rebuilt from ashes. But in that quiet room, as a silent toddler hugged the mother who came back from the dead, and a lost daughter found the woman who gave her life, a family began. Broken, mended, strange, and messy, but finally together. The Mafia boss's daughter had said her first word, pointing at a waitress. That word had unraveled lies, exposed a killer, and brought a ghost back to life. It had given a lonely man back his wife, a silent child her voice, and a lost girl her name. It was not an end. It was a very complicated, painful, and hopeful beginning. Thanks for watching. Did you see that twist coming? Which part shocked you the most? Let me know where in the world you're following this story from. Subscribe for more tailies where family secrets and mafia drama collide. Your next favorite story is just a click away.